Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And in today's range report, I get the opportunity to revisit a firearm that I reviewed a few years ago. But unfortunately, that review was posted on my original YouTube channel, which of course YouTube took down. And this was one of the few videos that I neglected to save. So I reached out to the owner of this exact firearm and said, hey, can I get another chance with that one? And he said yes. And I think this is a good thing because I think now I'm a better reviewer and a better shot. So hopefully I'll be able to do this firearm justice. And the gun that we will be taking a look at today is the Colt Cobra. And this is one of the reissued ones, post 2017. This is built off of Colt's D frame. And unlike the originals, this is an all-steel frame. The originals were made of aluminum. The barrel is 2 inches long, making this a snub-nose revolver. It is chambered in .38 Special Plus P. So there's a few upgrades and differences from the original, and I will actually compare and contrast this with an original later in this video. But before we do that and talk about all the things that I like and don't like, and of course gift this to the range and see how it shoots, I always want to thank the people that make these videos possible. First and foremost is the owner of this revolver. His name is Jack. In fact, he's the first person named Jack that lends guns to the channel because I now have 2. So we're just going to call this Jack number 1. Thank you, Jack. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I could not do this without them. And if you guys want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, there is a link in the description below. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who always provides the ammunition for these range reports, thus making them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And here we are once again reviewing a classic Colt firearm. I know if you're here, you love the history of the Colt company. Most likely you own a Colt 1911, or you like other classic firearms like the Beretta 92, the CZ75, or the Browning High Power. And you might be in the market for a set of custom grips to make your pistols unique and one of a kind. Well, I have the perfect grip company for you. Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark is an artist and he's a craftsman. He can apply custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, create his own laminate woods, and apply exotic materials like snakeskin and alligator skin to these grips to make them unique and one of a kind. So if you're in the market for something special that nobody else has, please check out Brownworks. I'm going to put a link in the comment section below to his website as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. Please go over there, check out everything he has to offer. And when you place that order for your custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so let's talk about the cool revolver we have on the table today, the Colt Cobra. This is one of the new ones. It's the reissue with an all-steel frame. It's a double action, single action revolver. There are variants of this, which are double action only. It is .38 Special Plus P rated. So this is not a .357 Magnum revolver, but it can take very powerful .38 Special loads. The barrel is 2 inches long, making it a snub-nose revolver. And the frame is made of steel instead of the original aluminum. So some people are going to think these changes are upgrades, some are not, but that will be for you to decide. But before I compare this to an original, and of course take it to the range and see how it shoots, I want to talk about the things that I like and don't like. And the first thing I love about this revolver is that it is a Colt. Colt has always held a special place in my heart. I've always loved the history of that company because I think it goes hand in hand with the history of the United States. And as I always say, the history of humanity is written through the barrel of a gun. Whether or not you're a pacifist or a warmonger, you have to admit firearms are one of the defining tools of humanity. And to understand the gun is to understand humanity. And so Colt just has that long reputation. and I love to collect Colts, I love to shoot Colts, and I love to learn about Colts. The next thing I love about this revolver is that unlike many of its competition, it has 6 shots. Yeah, many of the guns that this will compete with, like the Smith & Wesson J frames, are only going to have 5 shots. So getting that extra round in there, I think, is really important. I've already mentioned this gun is plus P rated and not rated for .357 Magnum. I actually do like that because I have never liked it when you put .357 Magnum in a gun this small. Now I know some people are going to say, Jason, you're a wimp. I just like to have guns that are comfortable to shoot. And to be honest with you, I think 38 Special Plus P is plenty powerful enough for self-defense in a gun like this, which is very, very concealable. You'll be able to continue to control it under rapid fire conditions. Sometimes .357 Magnum, especially in the hands of novice shooters, might be a little bit too much. And the last thing I really like about this is the front sight. I love the fact it comes with a fiber optic front sight. Many times the smaller revolvers have a ramp sight. I can't always see those very good, and I'm not very accurate with them, but this fiber optic sight I can see really, really well. But now let's talk about a couple things about this revolver that I don't like. And while I have the gun close to the camera, I want to show you the finish. This is a matte finish on this stainless steel frame, and I do not think it is very good. I see a lot of machine marks, and to be honest with you, I thought this receiver was cast because it just looks rough. But it's not. It is forged. I did double check, but when I run my fingers along the trench sight, it feels sharp and rough. All the edges are sharp. I really feel like with 15 or 20 more minutes of buffing, they could have made this gun look way better. Even though the finish does not affect the function of the gun, it does affect people's perception of it. And perception is reality. Then, I'm also not a big fan of the rear sight. Now, as complimentary of the front sight, I don't like the rear sight. As you probably know, many of these small revolvers use a trench sight in the back, and there's no adjustments there. I typically do not shoot revolvers very accurately, but especially snub-nose revolvers are terrible for me. And so if I had more adjustments here in the back, I really feel like I could dial these in just a little bit more. And I know why people say there's no adjustable sights on the back, because this is going to be in a purse or a small holster. You don't want it to snag. I totally get that, but I would like to have an option of an adjustable sight on the back. And the last thing I don't like about this gun is that it is a snub-nose revolver. I just don't shoot these very well. I don't like revolvers with barrels this short. But I don't carry revolvers, but I understand why many people would like a revolver this size. So that's what I like and don't like about this gun. So now I want to adjust the camera, and I want to compare it to an original Colt Cobra, see what they've changed. Then I want to show you what this trigger is all about, both in double and single action, and then finally we'll get it to the range and see if I can shoot this worth a darn. So here we go, let me adjust the camera, and let's learn more about this revolver. So while I have this opportunity, I do want to compare and contrast the new Colt Cobra to the old Colt Cobra. So I just want to point out some of the differences that I've noticed here on the workbench. We'll start with the grips. Here on the new one, we can see that the grip screw is in the bottom. On the old style, they go through the side of the grips. You'll also notice that the placement of the screws in the frame are in different places. Here on the original, you can see the screw here underneath the cylinder, and on this one, it has been moved forward. On this side of the receiver, or the frame, you can see the placement of those pins. And then here you can see that they are in a different location. And that's obviously because the internal mechanics of this gun are definitely going to be different. The old school one still has the firing pin on the hammer. And on the new one, we do have a transfer bar. Now that probably is a nice upgrade, making this revolver a little bit more safe. Here on the business end of the gun, you'll notice the new ones have a crown on them. It looks like it's a little bit recessed. There's the original, and you can see the lands and grooves go all the way to the end. And you'll also notice that the modern one has an Allen screw here in the front, and that's probably for the front sight, where the original one has more of a ramp. I can tell you that the fit and finish of the old one is a lot nicer. Even though this is an aluminum frame, everything is smooth. It just looks a lot nicer. On the new one I mentioned, the finish is just a little bit on the rough side. So that's mainly the differences between an old and a new one. So now let's check out this trigger. So obviously let's safety check the firearm, ensure there is no ammunition in it. And now let's test out this trigger. So let me get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge, turn it on, clear the averages, and let's see what this trigger measures at. So I will start with this in double action, and hopefully this is not too heavy of a pull. And I also want to note one more thing as I'm about to use this gauge that I did notice earlier, and I guess I neglected to say. Look at the shapes of the trigger guards. On the modern one, you can see this is much more squared. I think it looks a little bit more industrial. And on the original, it's much more rounded and smooth. That, I think, is a much better look. All right, so now let's test out this trigger in double action. Here we go, our first pull. 7 pounds, 10.8 ounces. 7 pounds, 15.3 ounces. 8 pounds, 0.9 ounces. 7 pounds, 12.8 ounces. And finally, 8 pounds, 2.6 ounces, which gives us an average of 7 pounds, 14.9 ounces. I think that is pretty darn good for a double action revolver pull. Sometimes these things are just so heavy that I think they really negatively impact the shooting experience. So now let's test this out in single action. And I should probably clear those averages out. And let's redo this again. For our single action pull, 3 pounds, 9.2 ounces. 3 pounds, 8.9 ounces. 3 pounds, 11.3 ounces. 3 pounds, 13.2 ounces. And finally, 3 pounds, 12.1 ounces, which gives us an average of 3 pounds, 10.9 ounces. And I think that is also a really nice single action pull. Not too light, but I wouldn't want anything below 3.5 pounds for a gun like this, which is probably going to be carried for self-defense. So that's what this trigger is all about, and the comparisons with an original. So finally, let's get this thing to the range. So as always, I'll start off with the target at 7 yards. I'm going to put 12 rounds through this, so 2 cylinders just to get enough data. These are my first shots, and hopefully I'm going to shoot this well. Normally, I don't shoot snub-nosed revolvers good at all. So let's find out how I do. And I think this range trip is definitely off to a good start. Normally I don't shoot these small revolvers this well, so I'm going to take that group all day long. I'm also really impressed with how well this gun is absorbing the recoil. We do have these rubber hoe grips, and while I don't like the way they look, I do like the way that they feel. And couple that with the all steel frame, it is a very soft shooting 38 special. I'm really glad this isn't in 357 Magnum. And finally, I'm really happy with the performance of this front sight. I mentioned I love fiber optic front sights, and in the low light situation at my range, I can definitely pick up that front sight really well and put it right on target, and I think that is definitely helping my accuracy. All right, so now let's double the distance of this target. I'm going to go for the head on this silhouette, see what happens to this group at about 15 yards, and hopefully I'll continue to shoot this revolver this well. Normally, I struggle with this, so let's go back to the range and see what happens. And overall, I'm pretty happy with that group. I did have one flyer, and it was totally me. It was not the gun. I knew which shot that was when I pulled the trigger. But for 15 yards, I'm pretty impressed with this. Now, this is a gun typically designed, I think, for closer engagements. So going out to 20, 25 yards, any accuracy I get out of this gun is just icing on the cake. But so far, it's performing well. All right, so now let's bench rest this. I'm gonna try to take as much of the human element out of the equation as possible, put 12 more rounds through this, and hopefully I'll get it to group pretty close to the center of the target. So let's go back to the range and see how I do. And when it comes to a revolver with a barrel shorter than 4 inches, this is the most accurate one I have ever reviewed. And as I said, maybe I'm getting better as a gun reviewer and a better shot. Normally, I stay away from these guns personally when it comes to my collection. I just don't shoot them that well. I think they're cool, but the accuracy is just never there for me. But this Colt Cobra is definitely awesome. It's a very easy gun to shoot and a very easy gun to aim. All right, so the next test I want to do is the double action test. I already showed you this has a pretty darn good double action pull. So hopefully at about 7 yards, that's going to also translate to a really good group. And sometimes I shoot double action guns better than I do single action. So let's go back to the range and see what this gun is like in double action only. And this gun grouped really well for me, maybe just as good, if not better, than in single action. So I'm really impressed with this thing. I've never had a snub-nosed revolver shoot this accurate and this well for me. I also have to be very complimentary with this trigger right out of the box. That double action pull, while it is very long, it is very smooth and predictable. All right, so the last test I want to do is go back to the range and just try to shoot this as fast as possible. Now, I like to think I have a pretty darn fast trigger finger, especially when it comes to semi-automatic pistols. But with revolvers, I have to let that trigger all the way out. It definitely slows me down, and with almost an 8-pound trigger, I don't think I'm going to be able to match that speed. But we'll see. So let's go back to the range and just see how fast I can shoot 6 shots through this little gun. And while I don't think that was very fast for me at all, I think in a self-defense scenario that would be perfectly adequate. I've always been fascinated by how people can shoot revolvers so fast in double action. I know many of those trick shots have special revolvers where the triggers have been worked on to perfection. But this trigger is a little bit long and a little bit heavy, and I'm just used to semi-automatic. I also am pretty happy with that group. All the rounds were pretty much on target, so no problems there, and I was pretty much just point shooting. I am very impressed with this gun and its performance. So what are my final thoughts with the reissue of the Colt Cobra, chambered in .38 Special? Well, the pros of this: it has more capacity than many of its competitors with 6 rounds. It's a very low recoiling snub-nosed revolver. And for me, it is exceptionally accurate for what it is. It's still not as accurate as many semi-autos, but I could definitely get by with this one. The cons: it's a revolver. I'm just not that big of a revolver fan. It doesn't mean I don't appreciate them or think if you like them that you're wrong. They're just not my type of gun. So when I can shoot this gun this well, I'm pretty happy with that. And finally, the finish. I know most people that are going to buy a Colt are buying it for that brand name, and I just have a higher expectation for a finish on a gun from Colt. I'm just disappointed with that. But besides that, function-wise, it's great. It's accurate. The trigger is pretty darn good. So on my star system, how would I rate the Colt Cobra? Well, I feel confident in giving this gun 4 out of 5 stars. It's a great little revolver. For me, it's the most accurate one I have ever reviewed in a revolver with a barrel shorter than 4 inches. I normally just don't shoot these guns that well, but this one is performing great for me. So if you're a revolver fan and you're looking for something to carry, I would definitely look at the Colt Cobra. And the biggest advantage for me in carrying this over Smith & Wesson is that extra round. So what do you guys think? Are you a fan of Colt revolvers? Do you think they're superior to Ruger and Smith & Wesson? I know that's going to cause a debate in the comments section below. So let me know. So, as always, thanks for watching. Gun is to shoot. We do have these nice Hogue rubber grips.